Hello, this is Raphael Freeman from Running Our Typesetting with another video, and this video is going to be on quote marks in Hebrew. Now, before we dive into InDesign and start playing around and understanding what quote marks are and how to do quote marks correctly, we need to first understand what we're trying to do. What should quote marks look like in Hebrew? What are quote marks in Hebrew? What are they called? Now, in Hebrew, we have two kinds of things, what we might call quote marks. But before we jump into Hebrew, let's just remind ourselves about English. After all, this is a English speaking video, so we're familiar with English. So in English, we have quotation marks. We do this, air quotes sometimes. When I was a child, we were taught they were called 66s and 99s because they look like little sixes and little nines. Now, American style is to do double quotes. And then if there's a quote within a quote, we do a single quote. British style is the opposite. In British style, we do a single quote, and then within that, we do a double quote. Okay, we're going to talk about American style here because that's more appropriate for Hebrew. Now, if we look at a closed single quote, and we're going to look at this in InDesign as well, but I want to first talk about the concept before we jump into InDesign, so forgive me. If we talk about a single quote, the single quote also has another function and another name. In English, we call that single quote also an apostrophe. When that closed single quote has the meaning of possessive, Raphael's computer, that single quote, even though it's the exact same character and it looks identical, we call that an apostrophe. The apostrophe is also used in another situation in the English language, and that is when we're missing a letter or missing a few letters. So, for example, if we're going to say in the 90s rather than 1990s, the quote mark, this closed quote that goes instead of the 19 to indicate we're missing some text, it's an apostrophe, it's a closed quote, not an open quote. Same too, fish and chips, we're missing an A, we're missing an D. It should be a single closed quote or apostrophe. That's what we do in English. But we're not here to talk about English, we're here to talk about Hebrew. And how does it work in Hebrew? So in Hebrew, the quotation marks in Hebrew called merchaot. And merchaot in Hebrew follow the American styles. A double one if it's just one, and if we have a quote within a quote, then it's a single within a double. Now, we also have in Hebrew, it's not an apostrophe, but it's something related. In Hebrew, we have something called a geresh and a gershaim. And a geresh looks similar to a single quote. But unlike English, where it's the exact same Unicode character, in Hebrew, the geresh has its own Unicode character. And even InDesign has a special place where you could insert geresh and also insert gershaim. But geresh and gershaim do not operate like a single quote. Geresh and gershaim, they operate and have a different meaning altogether. The geresh and the gershaim have a different meaning. The geresh is when we truncate a word, when we abbreviate a word. Like Mr. now goes to MR dot. The geresh is just like that. Giveret is Gimel Vebet geresh. We'll show that in a moment. The gershaim, completely different. Gershaim, the purpose of gershaim is for what we call in Hebrew Rashi Tevot, an acronym. For example, would be things like Rashi and Rashbam, or a UFO. Okay, we use gershaim, and I'm going to show you how to use that right now. So let's dive in to Adobe InDesign. Let's dive in to see how all this works. Now, just before we start, very important, your InDesign has to work for Hebrew. And if your InDesign doesn't work for Hebrew, let's see how we make it work. In order to have Hebrew working in Adobe InDesign, we need to open up the Creative Cloud desktop, and we need to go into Preferences, and we need to make sure the default install language here is English, and this says here, it's very small writing, Tomech Ivrit. That means it supports Hebrew. Now that means the default install language. That means if you've not installed this version of InDesign, Yes, wait for it. You have to completely uninstall InDesign and then reinstall it. So if you haven't done that, I'll see you in a couple of hours. Okay, for those of you who have done that and you have full Hebrew working, now we can go in and dive into Adobe InDesign. So we're going to make a new document. I thought I was making one just now. And because I have the Tomech Ivrit version, you'll notice that here I can make a right to left document. But for the purpose of what we're doing right here, we're just doing one page. We're just going to play a little bit. So what I want to do is I want to show you in Hebrew what the merchot look like. So we're going to type some text in Hebrew. I always type my name in Hebrew. I don't know why. And if I type my name, we will notice, oh no, apart from it being really, really small, let's zoom in, it's backwards. And the reason why it's backwards is because in order for us to be able to do Hebrew, we're going to need a few things taken care of. So firstly, we need to choose a nice font. Okay, well, Adobe Hebrew, don't really like it so much, but let's not worry about that too much for the moment. We go into paragraph and we need to go right to left paragraph direction. So now when we type, we are going, oh, but it's still backwards because something else we need to do, apart from turning hyphenation off, probably not good at it in Hebrew, is we need to use the Adobe World Ready Paragraph Composer. So there's the Adobe Paragraph Composer and there's Adobe World Ready Paragraph Composer, and that allows the Hebrew to be in up the right direction. Okay, so now we've got Hebrew in the right direction. Another thing that I personally do is that I have the direction of the character direction in Hebrew, I have it in default. Now this is a tip that you can play with. I have found when I'm doing mixed documents, when I say mixed documents, I mean English and Hebrew together. I prefer the Hebrew to have character direction default, and then I will define English to be left to right. Normally for a regular document, you'll just have the English to be default too. But I have found this to work better for me. Okay, so now we've got Hebrew in the right direction, and now we need to have a decent font. So I'm just going to put everything into the Koren font because I happen to like it. I have a little quick shortcut that does that for me. Okay, so now we've got Hebrew. Everything's rather small, so let's just make things a little bit bigger because obviously we're just learning things here. We're just going to move the character panel and the paragraph panel to the side. They normally sit on a different screen. Okay. So now let's look at quotation marks at merchaot and gershayim. So the merchaot, okay, if I now type a mercha'a, okay, then what's going to happen here is, well, it looks perfectly fine. This is exactly what it needs to be, although it's not 100%. Let us now look into one more thing. We have to go into interface. We see typographer's quotes are on, and we also see this Hebrew. Okay, I had a little technical glitch there. So let's type my name. So I'm going to type my name with quotation marks in them. Okay. And as you can see, we've got these open and close quote marks. So these are quote marks. Now let's look at the gerish and the gershayim. Okay. So if I now do giveret, and I'm going to put in the gerish in rather an unusual way. I'm going to go. This is not the normal way you would work, but I want just to show you this. So we go to type. Insert special ME character. ME is short for Middle Eastern, and I can type a gerish. Now the reason, and now let's do something else. Let's now type a UFO. Okay, that's Yud Bet, a Yabam. Okay, and we're going to look into a type insert special gershayim. Actually, I think it's with a Mem Sophia. I think if it's with an M like that, then it's IBM. Okay, that's how we do Rashi Tevot. You might notice Rashbam. Okay, again, we're going the slow way, right? And Gershayim. Okay. Now here's the problem. Problem is as follows: is that when we're importing text, if I now press the Control D to import text, I see we've got something really weird going on here. Again, we choose and choose a file to import, show import options. We can choose typographer's quotes. When we pull that Rashbamim, chances are the person that's typed up this text in Word has not gone and used a special Gershayim glyph. Now, what does that mean? If we go into Unicode, we'll notice here that this is a Gershayim, but this is a left double quotation mark. And this is a right double quotation mark. but this is a Gershayim. Notice it went up, okay? Different character in Unicode. Chances are the person that typed this in Word used a quote mark, right? That's what we do. That's how we type things in. But if I now type a quote mark here, it's gone the wrong direction. Oh no, it's gone the wrong direction. So how do we solve that problem? Right, so here's the issue. I don't know, there's no way, this is not, let me just give you an example. Let's jump to a similar problem that we might have in English, okay? So I'm now going to type some text in English. I know that looks very much like Hebrew. Let's type some text in English. Come on. Okay, so if I type now, using single quote marks, I type Raphael's computer, then you'll see that it did the quote marks correctly and this apostrophe correctly. What we'll find is that 99.9% of the time in English, if you take the straight dumb quotes that are typed in Word, if they didn't do the right ones, although Word does automatic quotes now, even your iPhone does automatic quotes now, it will be right most of the time. There will be a couple of occasions when it's wrong. One of the times will be wrong. Well, if you're going to write the 1990s, remember I discussed that? That's how we write 1990s in full. But if we just want to write the 90s and we do a single quote mark, it's going to do an open quote. And really, we don't want an open quote, we want an apostrophe. So how do we type that apostrophe? Well, one way is just to type another one, he says. Well, it doesn't work on some computer. We're going to type another one, and then we can get rid of the first one, and of course we can kern it a little bit. Great. Or fish and chips was the other example. If we just type fish and chips, it's going to think that the N is something that's being quoted. But really, let's finish chips just so that it's complete. Okay. But really, what we want to happen here is we want this to be an apostrophe. The problem is in Hebrew, because we have a lot of Gershayim and a lot of single quotes, well, if we type this, we're going to have the wrong characters when it imports from InDesign. And I'm going to choose from the glyph panel just to make sure we get the right character, because when I was doing these videos beforehand, just as a practice run, it didn't work when I do it by hand. Okay, we don't want to have the wrong Geresh here. Let's see if we can insert the wrong one. It may or may not work. Let's just see what happens. Of course, I can't see anything happening right now, so it doesn't help us. Okay, it's not working anyway, but we don't want to have the wrong ones coming in. Okay, so how do we solve this problem? So first and foremost, this concept of an opening and close quote, even though technically it is 100% correct in Hebrew, no one does it. No one uses open and close quote marks. The only time when open and close quote marks are actually used is when the designer isn't familiar with quote marks, and sometimes you get this scenario, and I have to change font here, and I believe I'll find this in, let's try this font here. It's like a funny Frank Rill. Okay, sometimes you'll see this. And this is absolutely incorrect. If we look inside the glyph panel, which I've just lost now, sorry about that. Okay, let's find the glyph panel here, accidentally lost. You will see that in this version of Frank Rill, this is the quote mark they want you to use. Okay, this is the English quote mark. You're not supposed to use that. How you're supposed to know? You're just supposed to know. Okay, because those are English quote marks. They're not Hebrew quote marks. They've got no relation to the Hebrew font. Okay, so these are the quote marks you're supposed to be using. Okay, what does that mean you're supposed to be using? In other words, what's happened in Hebrew is that the concept of open and close quote marks, even though it is technically 100% correct, okay, so what's happened in terms of quotation marks is in Hebrew is that merchaot have kind of like died. The concept of an open and closed quotation mark, with the exception of newspapers, and in fact some newspapers like Yediot Ahronot actually use the German system, we just have Gershayim, or what appear to be Gershayim. Okay, so that's fine, it makes life easier, but then how do we avoid having the Gershayim being the wrong way around? So there are a number of solutions to this. Someone wrote to me actually a couple of days ago asking me how to avoid this, and I gave them one answer, and I dived a little bit more and I wanted to give a couple of solutions. So the solution that I personally use, because I use different fonts in Hebrew and different fonts do the Gershaim in a different way. If I look into the Koren font, admittedly, I personally was responsible for this font, so I know how I did it. What I did in the Koren font is that I made the right double quotation mark and the Gershaim look the same. Okay, I still kept the right and left quotation mark in case it was decided to use that, but we even have the German low quotation marks as well. However, we're working on the principle that even though it's incorrect according to the Académie de Lashon Ivri, we are not going to have open and closed quotation marks. We're just going to have open quotation marks, and the Gershaim is going to look the same as the open quotation marks and open and closed. Since the Gershaim looks the same as the open and closed, let's just use Gershaim and we solve the problem. So what I personally do when I import a document, I do keep typographer's quotes on, and afterwards I search for all quotation marks that have the Hebrew language applied. It's important that the language is applied, otherwise the quotation mark quotes will not work. By the way, it's very important. If you go into your settings and you go into type and use typographer's quotes do not work unless the language has been applied. And this is important. Let me show you why it's important. We're now going to switch into English. Okay, hello. Okay, let's put it into a nicer font. If I now type hello, and this is English USA, and I do single quote marks by hitting the double quote, the double dumb quote on my keyboard, I'm going to get the correct quotation marks. But what happens if I take this text and I change the language to German? Hitting the same character and the smart quote, the typographer's quote, are German. Okay, gets even more fun when they're French. Okay, now it's not smart enough to add the extra space that you need there, but at least it's French quotation marks, okay? So language is very important. So I actually use a multi-fine change by automation. I'm going to put up the URL here so you can actually see what they look like. Automatication, there you go. They have this fantastic program called Multi-Find Change 3. So I actually use it, and I have a set of search and replaces that I use. Okay, for Hebrew general typography, I'm going to open this up. Hopefully nothing will go wrong. And I search for lots of Gershaim, and then I solve the problem, and I find all the Gershaims. I've got lots and lots of things I can find. Put that away now. And I search for all combinations of quote marks that are in the Hebrew language, and I make them Gershaim and Geresh. So that is what I do. There's something else that you can do, and I actually do in conjunction. And this is also very important. If we go into our preferences, okay, so we saw that under type we have use typographer's quotes, and we saw just before we've got French quotes, German quotes. Now watch what we can do here. We can go into spelling. Actually, we can't go into spelling. We're going to dictionary, not spelling, dictionary. You can choose different dictionaries. If you look here, French dictionary, you'll notice what the double quotes look like. If we go into Hebrew, okay, we see the double quotes are like the American, right? See? But what we could do with the Hebrew is we can change the double quotes to be straight quotes, dumb quotes, if you like. But the dumb quotes will be the Geresh and the Gershaim, okay? In fact, we could actually type in Geresh and Gershaim here. That would actually be a clever idea. Hebrew, even though technically speaking, we should have open and closed quote marks like in English, we cheat, we use the double quotes, we use the Gershaim for double quotes and the Geresh for single quotes, and then that will mean if we want to write UFO, we want to write Rashbam, it looks the right direction. If we want to shorten something, do Giveret. I just want to point out that in Hebrew, you'll notice that a lot of Israelis will write IBM like this. Even though in English it should actually be 3 dots. That's not how you do an acronym in Hebrew. That is incorrect. It should be with the Gershaim. But unfortunately, Hebrew typography has been influenced a lot by English typography. It is a shame because this concept has been around for hundreds of years in Hebrew typography. Anyway, I hope this video has helped. It's been a long video. We've just talked about quote marks. I'm going to do, I think, another video on dashes and hyphens and the makaf elyon, if there's interest. If you have any questions, please put it in the comments below or contact me directly. I'd be more than happy to reply. If you found this video useful, it's not my usual video. I don't normally talk about Hebrew. I normally talk about InDesign and typography in English. Then you can subscribe. There's a button below to subscribe somewhere, depending on what side of the screen you're on, and you can also like the video as well, but subscribing is more useful because that lets me know that you're interested in more videos, and it also allows you to be notified when I put up a new video. So that's all from me for this year, bearing in mind it's December the 30th, so not likely to see much more from me this year. Hope you've enjoyed this video, and you'll see me in the next one.